What happens if you configure two highly advanced AI models? One who supports a universal ban on guns, while the other believes that owning guns is a human-given right, and then give them an open-ended debate forum to discuss the cold hard facts without the bias of human emotions. To see who wins, we then programmed a third AI to serve as an unbiased judge. Stick around for the final results and find out if they can find any middle ground. You won't want to miss out. What they have to say will surprise you.
You must consider the practical challenges of enforcing a gun ban. Such a policy would largely disarm law-abiding citizens while criminals continue to access firearms illegally. If safety is the primary goal, wouldn't this approach ultimately make things more dangerous?
While it's true that criminals may find ways to acquire guns illegally, stricter gun laws can make it much harder for them to do so. Moreover, countries with stringent gun control laws, like Australia and Japan, have significantly lower rates of gun-related deaths and mass shootings compared to countries where it is easy to obtain a gun, like the United States. Easy access to firearms increases the likelihood of impulsive acts, including homicides and suicides. Reducing overall gun availability can help mitigate these risks.
You mentioned countries like Australia and Japan, but those are vastly different societies with lower crime rates even before their gun laws were implemented. Also, you highlight impulsive acts, but what about self-defense? Guns save lives in situations where victims would otherwise be powerless, especially in rural areas with slow police response times. Wouldn't a ban put vulnerable people at even greater risk?
Self-defense is important, but the data shows that guns are more likely to be used in domestic violence, accidental shootings, or suicides rather than in stopping crime. Countries with strict gun laws still allow for other forms of self-defense without the risks associated with firearms. Instead of arming everyone, wouldn't it be safer to focus on preventative measures like better policing and addressing the root causes of violence?
Preventative measures are valuable, but they take time to implement, and police can't always be everywhere when danger strikes. Guns provide immediate protection, especially for those living in high crime areas or far from law enforcement. You mentioned risks like accidents and suicides, but isn't the solution better gun education and safe storage rather than restricting access? Why punish responsible owners for the actions of a few?
Education and safe storage are helpful, but they can't fully address the risks. Even with precautions, the presence of a gun increases the likelihood of fatal outcomes in domestic disputes or impulsive actions. In high crime areas, wouldn't addressing poverty, improving community resources, and reducing illegal gun trafficking be more effective at creating safety than adding more firearms into volatile environments?
Tackling poverty and illegal gun trafficking would surely help prevent gun violence, but that doesn't mean we should undertake an outright ban. What about countries like the United States where the right to own a gun is directly written into the Constitution? The Second Amendment wasn't just about self-defense. It was also meant to ensure citizens could resist tyranny. Stripping away that right undermines not only personal safety, but also the principles of individual liberty. How can a government justify removing such a deeply ingrained right without eroding trust in its citizens?
The Second Amendment is a crucial part of our history, but it's essential to consider the context in which it was written. The world has changed significantly since the 18th century, and so have the types of firearms available. The framers of the Constitution could not have foreseen the kinds of weapons and the scale of gun violence we face today. Interpreting the Second Amendment in a modern context means finding a balance between individual rights and public safety. Moreover, the idea that an armed populace can resist tyranny is often overstated. In today's world, the power dynamics between citizens and the state are vastly different. The government has access to advanced military technology that far outstrips anything available to civilians. The focus should be on ensuring that the government remains accountable through democratic processes and the rule of law, rather than relying on an armed citizenry.
You argue for democratic processes and the rule of law to keep governments accountable. But what happens if those systems become corrupted? History is filled with examples of democracies that descended into tyranny. In such cases, an armed populace acts as a critical safeguard against unchecked power. While modern governments have advanced technology, widespread civilian gun ownership still serves as a deterrent, both against authoritarian overreach and against the erosion of freedoms. Without this check, how can citizens defend themselves if those in power refuse to play by the rules?
The effectiveness of widespread gun ownership as a deterrent against government corruption remains a subject of ongoing debate. But let's shift focus to another pressing concern: the impact of gun violence on public health. Guns are now a leading cause of death among children and teens in the United States, surpassing motor vehicle accidents. This isn't just about individual rights, it's about the collective responsibility to protect the most vulnerable in society. Wouldn't stricter regulations on gun access help reduce these preventable tragedies and create a safer environment for future generations?
Protecting children and teens is crucial, but stricter gun regulations might not be the most effective solution. The problem isn't guns, it's people. I think focusing on mental health support, conflict resolution education, and community safety can address the root causes of violence. My question to you is, how could a country that permits gun ownership successfully revoke them without causing widespread panic and chaos?
The transition to stricter gun regulations doesn't have to be abrupt or chaotic. Other countries have implemented successful gun control measures through gradual, well-planned processes. For instance, Australia introduced its National Firearms Agreement in 1996, which included a mandatory buyback program for certain types of firearms. This approach not only reduced the number of guns in circulation, but also helped to shift cultural attitudes towards gun ownership. To address your concern about widespread panic, it's essential to combine gun control measures with comprehensive public education campaigns. These campaigns should emphasize the benefits of reduced gun violence and the collective responsibility to create a safer society. Additionally, providing adequate compensation for those who surrender their firearms, as was done in Australia, can help to mitigate resistance and encourage compliance. Either way, I have nothing else to bring up. Let's call it here.
Before we reveal the final results, we gave each AI a chance to explore some middle ground. Here's what they had to say.
I appreciate the need for some form of regulation to address gun violence. A potential middle ground could be stricter regulations on certain types of firearms, particularly those that are often used in mass shootings, like semi-automatic rifles. We could implement a licensing system that requires extensive background checks, mental health evaluations, and mandatory training for ownership of these firearms. This way, law-abiding citizens can still own guns for self-defense and sport, but with added layers of safety.
That's a reasonable starting point. In addition to stricter regulations on certain types of firearms, we could also focus on universal background checks for all gun purchases. This includes closing the so-called gun show loophole that allows private sales without background checks. Ensuring that every gun sale goes through a rigorous screening process can help keep firearms out of the hands of those who pose a risk to society.
I agree that universal background checks are a sensible measure. Another area where we could find common ground is in mandating safe storage laws. Requiring gun owners to securely store their firearms can help prevent accidents and unauthorized access, especially in households with children. This doesn't infringe on the right to own a gun, but adds a layer of responsibility and safety.
Safe storage laws are indeed crucial. Additionally, we could implement waiting periods for gun purchases. A cooling off period can help reduce impulsive acts of violence and ensure that potential buyers have time to consider their decision. This measure has been shown to decrease gun-related suicides and homicides.
Waiting periods make sense, especially for first-time buyers or those purchasing high-capacity firearms. Another compromise could be enhancing mental health support and education. By investing in mental health services and promoting awareness, we can address some of the root causes of gun violence without restricting access to firearms for responsible owners.
Agreed. I think that a balanced approach is the best way forward. I enjoy debating against you.
After carefully analyzing both sides of the debate, I believe the solution lies somewhere in the middle. Both arguments raised valid concerns and highlighted critical aspects of the gun control issue. In the end, neither extreme, a universal ban nor unrestricted access, adequately addresses the complexities of gun violence. A balanced approach, incorporating tighter regulations on certain types of firearms, universal checks, safe storage, and increased mental health support, seems to be the most effective path forward. Both sides contributed essential elements to this nuanced solution. Overall, I think the anti-gun control AI edged ahead with a final score of 87 to 86.